Hello and welcome. Russian attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure continues while Moscow is facing something like the night of the long knives. We'll talk about this and the situation along the front line, as well as troop generation by the Russians, as well as the political and international support in this situation report. There has been another round of Russian attacks on the Ukrainian infrastructure. This time the Ukrainians were saying that they shot down several of the used Iskanders. That is a likely sign that they actually brought in Patriot systems for air defense, as they only have two air defense systems capable of taking down ballistic missiles. As well as the old S-300, which should be out of ammunition by now, but we'll likely either see Patriot now or SAMPT in Odessa after those heavy attacks. Ukraine is also saying the attacks destroyed 100 tons of peas and 20 tons of barley, so the destruction of food is continuing. At the same time, they are saying that several museums have been damaged in the strikes on Odessa. Putin was saying what is needed on the 19th, what is needed to return to the grain deal. And among that is that the sanctions against grain and fertilizers are being lifted, as well as all Russian banks that are involved in food transfers, basically probably in paying that they have to be readmitted to SWIFT. Both of that seems extremely unlikely, so we'll have to see how it continues. But it seems that Russia is trying to blackmail the West with the airstrikes to achieve political goals here, to have Russian banks readmitted to the SWIFT system. If we go to the Eastern Frontier, north of the Seversky Donetsk, we have reports from the Russians. We have here Voenko. According to this, they claim they captured several positions. You see them here, 5 strong points, etc., and 4 observation points. They claim they captured several positions in this area here. There is no visual proof of this. We know that the Russians gained some additional ground in the direction of the Oskil, west of Liman Pershi, but how far these advances have continued, we do not know. We have now confirmation that the past successes west of Karmazinivka have been a little bigger than initially anticipated. This is unclear, though, when they have been achieved, so it is not a fresh success. It's probably more likely a confirmed success from the past. Also, the Russians have attacked at Makivka, at Nevske, and at Dibrova. We have Makivka here, Nevske, and Dibrova is here. So in these directions, Russian attacks were also happening, and I'm full of hair. But this is when you have a stream technician trying to better your videos by appearing. So the Russian attacks went in those directions here. The Russians claim additional successes in the Serebryansk forest. I've seen a video of them capturing some trench, but then again, we have no idea when that happens. I couldn't see a geolocalization, so they claim additional successes, but I cannot prove that they actually happened. The Ukrainians are reportedly attacked close to Liman Pershi and here in Snikivka, here along this region. No successes can be reported. They also attacked close to Karmazinivka. They probably tried to push back the Russians back to the Sherebets River, and they attacked close to Torske. And in the Serebryansk forest, the Russians are saying it was a bigger mechanized attack here at Torske that they also repulsed. Further south, on the south of the Seversky Donetsk, we have Serhiy Cherebati, the colonel who is the speaker for the eastern grouping of the Ukrainian armed forces. He's saying the Ukrainians are still holding the initiative in the area and they are making progress. We have reports about small successes here at Orikhovo, Vasilivka. I reported in the situational picture from yesterday some reports that they gained some grounds in the high ground here and along the M03. I'm not able to confirm that they have had additional successes since then. So we know they had successes in roughly the last 48 hours here, but I cannot confirm that whether in the last 24 hours they gained some additional ground there. We also have reports of a Russian attack in the direction of Rihorivka that failed, so they probably tried along the ridgeline here to advance, not achieving anything. And the Ukrainian pressure on Andrivka and Klishchivka is continuing. Russian counterattacks from Klishchivka into the heights have been unsuccessful. The situation seems to be fairly static around here, no massive movements. We have Riba here showing us the situation where the fighting is happening, and they are saying, which is again interesting, first of all, they say the most attacks are small groups of 10 people, and then they emphasize again that the Russian forces are not able to seize back the initiative due to the lack of reserves and rotation. So we have the pro-Russian side saying we have trouble. We don't have reserves and our forces are not rotated, so their combat efficiency is going down. We also have a Ukrainian mill blogger that is claiming that they advanced somewhat in the direction of Hromove. This would be basically here, according to him, the Ukrainians advanced somewhat in this direction. I have no proof of this, so it might have happened, it might not have happened. Further south, on around Avdiivka, the fighting is continuing. Russians are reporting Ukrainian attacks on Vesele, Vodiane, and on here, so south from Siverne, and in Marinka, here. The Ukrainians attacked and the Russians attacked at Pervomaiske, Nevelske, at Krasnohorivka. This should still be fighting around this coal mine here that was captured by the Russians a couple of days ago. And the fighting is also continuing at Marinka and Novomikhailivka, here down here. I cannot confirm any changes in territory here, so it seems those attacks were more or less without success. The Russians are reporting a Ukrainian offensive activity in the direction of Mykilske, south of Vuhledar here. No change in territory that can be confirmed though. On the Oblast border, here south of Velika Novosilka, we have continued fighting. We have reports here that has been geolocalized closer to Priutne. You can see here the Russians shelled Ukrainian positions, and that obviously shows us that the Ukrainians are creeping into are coming closer and closer to Priutne. Riba is also reporting about fresh Ukrainian attacks on Uroshaine, and say again the Ukrainians try to whittle down, basically to wear down the Russian fighters with constant small attacks, again always in reference to the lack of rotation. Uroshaine is here, so it's east of the river here on the other side of Staromayorske, where fighting is also continuing, but I cannot confirm any change in this area. Further west, we have south of Orikhiv, fighting is also continuing. Ukrainians are saying they had successes south of Novodanilivka, so somewhere in this region here. I cannot confirm any of this. I do not have visual proof. I do not have admissions by the Russians. And the Russians claim they defeated a Ukrainian attack from Mala Tokmachka, so probably in this region here, somewhere here. And we have now the reports by Riba that is saying massive new Ukrainian counterattacks. You see the symbols here. They are continuing large number of armored vehicles. Claim that, was it here? I think it's Voenkor that are saying that 10 tanks here. A tank column of 10 tanks is also in the area. The Ukrainians supposedly right now are attacking massively again, but I cannot confirm that they have achieved anything as of now. The bridgehead over the Dnipro is unchanged. Ukrainians hold that position. And the Russians are claiming they defeated a small landing attempt here at Hola Pristan. It's supposedly more a sabotage group, recon group or something, but supposedly the Ukrainians were actually trying to cross the last river to, as I would like to call them for simplicity's sake, the mainland. So basically they were trying to step foot on the area beyond the last river in this regard, but at least according to the Russians, they were not successful. We have a video here now over the overall situation. We have a taken out Leopard 2A4. I cannot confirm from when that video is. It's always possible that this is already a month and a half old. Interesting though that he's lacking both threads and treads, I think is the name. The Russians are saying it was blown up by a mine and then received an anti-tank missile, and they are emphasizing that even wounded, basically taken out, tanks need to be destroyed, so the enemy cannot evacuate them, they can't be recovered and then repaired, because this here, what we see more or less looks repairable, and there are some claims that the Ukrainians already recovered it. This is supposedly, I guess, an ARV ready to pull it back. We still also have Russian attacks into the Ukrainian rear area. This supposedly shows a strike on an ammo depot in Zhytomyr, in the Zhytomyr area. As you can see, a massive explosion. Usually I don't report that much of the rear area attacks, but they're happening all the time. The Russians obviously try to find Ukrainian depots, whether of vehicles, of ammunition, of supplies, or to find Ukrainian factories involved in refurbishing or constructing military equipment and trying to strike it. And this supposedly was a successful attack. But that doesn't mean this is one-sided. We have Ryba here talking about a Ukrainian Storm Shadow strike on the Crimean Peninsula. This was, from my understanding, a huge ammo depot that is being reported being struck, and at least Ryba is saying it was done with Storm Shadow. So the assumptions that maybe Storm Shadow are not allowed to use on the Crimea seem to be out the window by now, which also opens them as a potential use against the Crimean Bridge. But in this regard, supposedly another huge ammo depot was blown up, and we see it's more or less roughly in the center here. Did it say? In Oktyabrsky or something like this. Should be somewhere in here. I think it should be this. And we can see that the distance to Ukraine is 190 kilometers to the Ukrainian lines. So this is far beyond the range of the HIMARS or even the ground-launched small diameter bomb, which, as far as I understand, are still not in Ukraine. It's far outside of their range, but here Storm Shadow comes into play and has obviously taken out a massive ammo dump. The Russians are also reporting a big new drone strike on Crimea. It's unclear how far it has been successful. We obviously have the Russians always claiming they basically shoot down everything and the rest they take over with electronic warfare and deflect. At the same time, pro-Ukrainian sources claim that at least some of those strikes were successful. I cannot fully confirm this as of now. And we have the report about the Crimean Bridge. The Russians say on the 1st of November this year, it will be fully operational again. Right now, as far as I understand it, the railroad bridge is untouched or basically fully operational, whereas one lane of the road bridge is open. The other one is damaged though and cannot be used. And at least this one should be repaired until the 1st of November, if it comes to the Russian claims at least. We have reports here from, as they say, a truly epic moment of gathering the many thousands of personnel of the Wagner Group. We have a video here where we see Prigozhin supposedly in Belarusia. It was his private jet was seen arriving there, so it's supposedly true. In a huge circle of Wagner fighters that this show that they have arrived in Belarusia. Prigozhin had a speech showing that he's still in control, like all the assumptions that he might lose his control over it are obviously false. It's He said, though, at least in an audio message that is attributed to him, that he sold African possessions of Wagner to pay for to pay open bills, basically. This is not going to reduce its operations, though, he claimed. At least the assumption from my side would be that the Russian government is trying to take away his financial sources, which would then give Prigozhin less autonomy. If he has to hand over the gold mines he was able to take possession of, the timber operations in Africa, everything that made him money that he got through the Wagner operations there. I think there were oil. He has rights to oil wells in Syria as well. If they are taken away from him, he doesn't have the autonomy anymore, because he will need handouts to keep Wagner running, and that should probably allow them, the Russian government, to control them better. At least that would be the assumption. There is the claim from him here that we will make Belarusian army the second army in the world. This seems to be a jab meant at the Russian armed forces in the typical reference, supposedly the second best army in the world the Russians are, because Wagner is now going to train the Belarusian army in this regard. There's also a claim that there's a new army base being built, for Wagner in Belarusia. And while I was not able to fully identify the location, I have the next best town, and this was here, Narovlia, something like this. And supposedly the base is 2 kilometers away from the Ukrainian border. So somewhere in this region here, supposedly a new base for Wagner will be established really close to the Ukrainian border, which because of this weirdness of this war, Ukraine will apparently not be able to shell it without causing an international incident and without giving Lukashenko the provocation to enter the war on Russia's side. At least that's the assumption. But according to the Ukrainians, the Russians are going to build, the Belarusians are going to build Wagner a base there. There's also an interview with a Wagner fighter, at least an assumed one, and it was interesting in this regard, because not only did he talk that barely nobody signed with the Ministry of Defense, only those that were kicked out of those that were kicked out of Wagner before for drunkenness and plundering. Basically, the rest stays loyal. But the interesting part is what we have here. Without Prigozhin, Wagner does not exist. He invented it all. We all came to Prigozhin and the commander, that's probably Utkin. And in fact, we swore an oath to them. So seemingly Wagner fighters swear an oath to Prigozhin. Now that's a really spicy thing here. And we have a number here according to which we have data about the supposed losses. I cannot confirm how accurate they are, but that would mean that that in total Wagner had 80% loss rate in its fighting in Ukraine so far. 28% of those were killed in action. And we have reports from Russia. They are going to raise the age limit for the conscription. I talked about this in long episodes ago in situation reports, that Russia was, for weird reasons I never really understood, wanting to raise the conscription age from 18 up, whereas the upper echelon would also be raising up. Now this is supposedly going to be nixed. The upper age will still rise to 30, and it will rise to 30 for next year, not layered year after year after year, as it was initially planned. And a lot of guys want to go to serve at the age of 18, so the lower age will remain at 18. Now, we could obviously speculate if this was intended from the beginning, then suddenly the whole thing would make a lot of sense. It never was too obvious to me why you would raise the upper age limit but not and at the same time raise the lower limit. Now, though, they have a bigger range of people they can recruit, and the important thing is, as long as Russia doesn't declare full war and general mobilization where they can simply pull in whoever they want, for any for any mobilization wave in the future, they have to take reserves, and you are only reserve if you have served before. So raising the age limit for conscription so you can pull more in, turn more into the status of reserves makes perfect sense. Didn't make sense though why they would raise the lower limit. Now it's being left at the bottom while the upper age limit jumps to 30 for the next year. This is interesting in this regard because it shows another sign of Russia preparing not only for a long war, but also creating the basis so it can increase the number of reserves and thus the number of mobilized personnel in the future. Also, they are preparing in other things. They're going to start training school children in using drones. So basically mobilizing the civil society to a certain degree. And we have a picture here of them taking out, in another example of troop generations, somebody has counted the numbers of artillery pieces, at least around 100, 152, 200, 203, and 100, 240 mortars that were taken out. I'm not sure how much of this here is genuinely their work. I think it might go back to Covert Cabal's video, who made a video about who took satellite pictures and was counting the artillery pieces to identify how much of it has been taken out of the depots. But let's come to the big topics, that is politics. Now, first of all, we have report that Lavrov will be participating in the BRICS meeting in Southern Africa. He will be there in Putin's stead. Putin will join in a video conference. South Africa would have to arrest Putin because of the international arrest warrant. This is obviously the reason why Putin doesn't come there. But at the same time, at least in the past, that didn't stop South Africa. Unless I'm completely misinformed, they let Omar Bashir enter the country and leave again, despite the same arrest warrant being issued for him in the past. Now, yesterday in the situational picture, I reported that Igor Girkin had been arrested and the speculations are going wild. His lawyer said he's being prosecuted for entries on his Telegram on the 25th of May, where he criticized the lack of payment for VDV units. But there are documents that claim that the investigation was started on the 18th of July when he was writing harsh criticism of Putin. We have an interesting claim here, and that is that according to this, the connections to Wagner are responsible. That he was denounced by a Wagner connected former deputy in this regard, and we have a document from that channel I reference to now and then that seems to be well connected. And according to this, the leaked document, there are repressive measures being used against all those that are being classified as mad and not open for negotiations, including Girkin. On the 14th of July, the former FSB Colonel Mikhail Polyakov, who ran several insider Telegram channels, was already arrested. On the 18th, it was the former FSB Colonel Vladimir Kvachkov. And now it was the former FSB Colonel Igor Girkin, because he was FSB. Sometimes I said GRU because I wasn't too sure about it anymore, and I just reread that he was FSB supposedly. I read GRU in the past though as well, but I think he's actually FSB, or he was FSB. The interesting part is that list has quite a lot of names. United Russia State Duma deputies. It has the former speaker of the Novorossiya parliament, editor-in-chief of Russia Today, Just Russia for Truth State Duma deputy, and Vladimir Solovyev, who is the Russia One talk show host. And the interesting part is they are supposedly getting arrested, or they are on that list for the reason that that jingoism is identified as a problem. They can't be reasoned with, they can't be negotiated, and they identify jingoism as the problem. The interesting part is Strelkov, after the Wagner mutiny, said there is a clique that wants to make peace no matter what to get rid of Putin. Obviously, such people would have a problem with jingoists who want to continue fighting. Now we have an interesting theory here that was forwarded by Riba. It's not from Riba, but according to which, and now I am asking myself a rhetorical question: who and why needed this incident, which discredits the reputation of the FSB and the Russian Federation? Hence, the authority of key security services making it an international event. Basically, the accusation is that it's a measure to discredit the FSB and the Siloviki that was supporting the FSB faction, and among them Girkin, because Girkin clearly had somebody who held the hand over him to protect him from any measures until now, and that all the three names I mentioned before are former FSB people. And the interesting part is, on the 12th of July, Girkin said the Wagner rebellion changed the balance of power, and the now dominating Osero cooperative, that's basically the Dacha commune where Putin also lives, wants to get rid of Putin to replace him with one of their own. And one of the measures for that would be a defeat. They basically need a defeat. That was Girkin's accusations. They also he said they would attack the Ministry of Defense, the Secretary of the Security Council, Nikolai Patrushev, and the FSB. Girkin also tried now to get out on bail, but because he claimed that he can't flee because of the Den Haag, the arrest warrant against him, but the law refused, claiming his good connections to law enforcement, that they would prevent, that would allow him to get away after all. So he's in jail at least until the 18th of September. We have some news about international support as well. 20 billion euros coming from the European Union over the next 4 years. And the US sending another 1.3 billion, including NASAMS, the surface-to-air system that is using air-to-air missiles, which are in plenty supplies. Interesting is 152 millimeter rounds. That's the Soviet caliber. I guess some generals in Pakistan have new gold Rolex now. At least that would be the expectation, that they were bought somewhere. And Pakistan, so far, a lot of Pakistani ammunition has appeared on the battlefields here. They also talk about mine clearing equipment obviously needed, tow missiles, anti-tank missiles, more drones, and so on and so forth. You can read it for yourself here. And finally, we have a video here of the Challenger 2 now in Ukrainian service in the air mobile brigades, which is kind of funny to think that probably the most heavy main battle tanks is now part of an air mobile brigade, but the Soviet, post-Soviet doctrine isn't really comparable with the paratroopers from the West, which are lightly armored. They actually have fully grown main battle tanks, and among them T-80, for instance. Ukrainian forces have T-80s for use of this. That was it already from me for now. If you enjoyed this report, then please hit the thumbs up. It really helps with the algorithm. Write your comment what you expect of the knife of long knives. Will we see Solovyev being arrested or falling out of a window? That's going to be definitely interesting. Leave your comment and have a discussion with the others. That also helps with the algorithm. And if you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. This channel is only possible because of the support from viewers like you. If you like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. Thank you very much to everyone already supporting this channel. That's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.